horror hounds, welcome to day 2 of my 31 frightening days of Halloween marathon. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at a John Carpenter flick, but not just any John Carpenter flick. As a matter of fact, we're going to be taking a look at his 1980 follow-up to his massive 1978 success of Halloween. That's right, we're going to be taking a look at The Fog. Now this film, as I had said, was his follow-up to the massive success that he had with Halloween, and at that point in time, Halloween was, of course, the highest grossing independent film of all time. So, I'm sure by that point many people were probably thinking that John Carpenter was just going to follow that up for an easy cash grab and, maybe followed up with Halloween 2 or something similar in the vein to Halloween. But, Carpenter just said fuck all that and did a complete 360 and took us to a really, really cool area of his imagination, gave us, a straight-on, less than more type of ghost story, which is awesome. I mean, it's definitely one of the better ghost stories to come out of the 80s in a time where it was really just all about gore and slashers and what have you. So let's go ahead and get into the plot of this film. What this film deals with is a little town called Antonio Bay, which is celebrating the 100th anniversary of their town, but it isn't before long that the fellow priest in the town, Father Malone, played by Hal Holbrook, realizes that the celebration that they're throwing is actually for people that wrongly murdered a group of 6 other people, actually. So that's basically, the big realization that this priest comes along is finding that the big celebration of the town is for, complete murderers. So it isn't before long that a very eerie and spooky fog becomes taking over the town of Antonio Bay, and it appears that the ghosts from 100 years past, the ones that were wrongly killed, are back to claim 6 lives to replace, to make it, even Steven for the 6 conspirators that killed them originally 100 years ago. Now, this film is packed with, in my opinion, one of the best casts that Carpenter ever garnered in any of his films. A lot of them actually happen to be Halloween alumni, such as Jamie Lee Curtis, Nancy Loomis, Charles Cyphers, who played Sheriff Brackett in the original Halloween. In addition to them, you also have the infamous Tom Atkins, who hands down is probably one of the best genre actors in the horror community. He's, of course, from The Fog, Night of the Creeps, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Maniac Cop, among many, many others. And this is actually one of the few films that I can recall where he doesn't have his infamous mustache, surprisingly. I almost completely forgot about that when I went back to watch this. But in addition to Tom Atkins, you also have, as I mentioned before, the great Hal Holbrook. And rounding out the cast, you have Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, Janet Leigh, from Psycho fame in this. So that cast alone kind of makes you feel pretty comfortable and cool going into this, just seeing, what a great kind of cast that Carpenter garnered for this film. Now, earlier when I had spoken about how this is a film that, really taps into that less is more quality, it's basically what Carpenter was going for in Halloween, where, it's very little gore, a lot of things are taking place in the shadows, it's not very in your face, it's just pretty much leaves it up to the audience and the viewer. And I say that's great, because, when you strip everything down, that's the best kind of horror, that's the kind of horror that will, just kind of tap into, your audience's subconscious, and really, it will just really freak themselves out, because, everybody's imagination is way worse than what you could possibly ever show them. So that's exactly what Carpenter does, even more so in The Fog, and it works beautifully. It's just a really, really well-made and well-put-together movie. The only thing that I feel like as years go on, I feel like people might even complain that this film is a little boring at times and, possibly slow. And it is slow. It's definitely a slow-building film, but I kind of compare it to, like the song Freebird. It's a long, epic song, and the beginning of it is, slow, and to many people's ears it might be like an acquired sound, but over the course of, the 9.5 minutes that the song is, it's always continuing, it's escalating. ending. It's like, it's like a flight of stairs going up. It's just, a constantly rising film until, like, the peak of the third act where, shit really hits the fan with, the ghosts in the fog. So that's really what I compare it to, but I really like the way that this film is constructed. I enjoy the pace of it. I think that it's really fun. I don't think that there needs to be a kill every 5 minutes in a horror film to make it entertaining or worthwhile. This is actually a very well-told, eerie, spooky ghost story, and this is, that's probably why this film didn't really do too well when it certainly wasn't smashing any box office records when it came out in 1980, but I'm sure even more so a reason that was because it wasn't really tapping into what was hip and cool at the time. But, that's Carpenter for you, to really just kind of go against what people were expecting of him and wanting him to do. But on the contrary, as much as Carpenter, wanted to go for the less is more quality, when he first actually submitted the rough cut for this film, it actually only clocked, it was too short for what they wanted the runtime to be for a theatrical release. I believe it, was just about 80 minutes, possibly even a little less. So the opening scene, which is a prologue with, a ship's captain telling a group of kids a story about the 100 years that passed, about the ghosts in the fog. That whole prologue was actually shot to make up extra time for the film to warrant the theatrical release time that the studio intended. But even more so, it really was a studio push. When you see the ghosts in the fog getting violent, and you're seeing shots of stabs of the spirits in the fog getting pretty ruthless with their victims. As much as it is cool, when you actually see that in the film, at least for me, I almost feel like that was totally a studio push. Like, just the way the atmosphere and the flow of the fog, you can just kind of tell that wasn't really Carpenter's plan, was to show that, and stuff like that. You can totally tell that was a studio push to be like, we need more blood, we need more stabs. So it kind of seems almost a little out of context and stuff, but I don't really hate on it that much, because, a few stabbings and a few gore shots every now and again is not bad, but it's certainly not over the top like, Friday the 13th gore or whatever. It's just something that the studio thought would, garner more audiences and give them a little bit more eye candy. So, it's really not that bad, but it's definitely not what Carpenter intended for the whole thing. But it's interesting to actually note as well that while this film was actually a pretty low-budget production, they actually shot this in anamorphic widescreen Panavision to basically make up for the low-budget look of it and make it look like it was way more professional. And I have to, really, give a pat on the back to Carpenter and his creative team for making that decision, because it certainly paid off. Because although that this is a low-budget thing, just shooting the film that way, it definitely looks like the production value is way higher than what the budget of the film probably was. So it really does look a lot slicker and cleaner than most horror films that were coming out in the early 1980s. And one other, really, really great thing that I would like to add about this is that Carpenter is probably one of the most music-savvy directors out there. He's so musically inclined, and, it totally comes through in all of the scores of his films. You actually got a peek of the score from The Fog in the beginning of this video during the title cards. The score is just really, really kick-ass and really phenomenal, and really just builds the suspension and the eeriness in this film. So, in closing, guys, if you guys are looking for something a little bit out of the norm that isn't all about blood and guts in your face and just really stripped down to something simple, eerie, less than more, and just a good old-fashioned ghost story, look no further than the 1980 version of The Fog, because in my opinion, this film is really like a fine wine, and it just continues to get better and better with age. Well, that's all I got for you guys tonight. Be sure to tune in tomorrow and every other single day for the rest of the month of October as my 31 Frightening Days of Halloween Marathon continues to trek on. Thanks again for tuning in. This is Frightener22.